when I had like these parents coming in for family therapy, I did a lot of like child psychology and therapy and taught parenting classes. I would see my own parents and I didn't like resolve all my anger and frustration that I have with my parents. And there's sort of like this teenager inside of me that's just like, why weren't you better fucking parents?
Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more, all to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open. Welcome to this episode of Eyes Wide Open. My name is Nick Thompson, and today our guest is Jeff Gunther, aka Therapy Jeff. Therapy Jeff is a licensed professional counselor. He is a content creator, host of two podcasts, Big Dating Energy and Problem Solve with Therapy Jeff. And he's also the author of a forthcoming new book called Big Dating Energy, How to Create Lasting Love by Tapping into Your Authentic Self. Therapy Jeff, thanks for coming on. How are you today?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Actually, the weather in Chicago is very nice today, so I am very excited to get outside a little bit later today.
I bet, yeah, it's really nice in Portland too. Did you know that I am like a really big Chicago Cubs fan?
I did not know that, and that's random. Why Chicago
Yeah.
Cubs?
My mom and dad and their family grew up in Chicago. So my dad came out as a Chicago Cubs fan. He was born into it, and so was I. And I was like heavy into baseball and watching the Cubbies. And then when they eventually finally won in 2016, it felt like so relieving and that I didn't have to fucking watch baseball anymore. It was just like this, like, oh, fuck this. This is like taking up all of my life. There's so many games, 3 hours long. Before, a couple of years ago, they're like three and a half hours long. But I'm thinking this year that I might try to get back into watching the Cubbies. So we'll see how that works out.
Okay. About 2 weeks ago, I went to the Sox game. I'm both. I'm Cubs first, Sox second. But
Okay.
man, once I'm done eating and having a couple drinks and it's like time to watch baseball, I am like, God, this game takes forever.
It really does.
And then the Tigers, I think the Tigers tied it in the ninth inning, and I'm like, son of a bitch, we're gonna go to extra innings now. Oh man. So crazy.
I get it. Those games are kind of a little grueling. Last night, though, I went to a Portland Trailblazers game. So nice, so smooth. I mean, the Blazers are fucking horrible, but it's like you're watching like this really talented, athletic ballet out there on the court, and it's very watchable.
That sounds fun. I got to get to a Bulls game. I kind of gave up on them several years back and stopped watching, but it's always a good time nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fast
Yeah,
paced.
we love that.
So, well, if you get out to Chicago, you'll have to let me know and maybe we can do a Cubs game.
Yeah, I'm into it. I've only been to Wrigley a couple times, but the two times that I've gone, it's like very majestic, magical.
Yeah.
I love it.
And nobody there really cares about baseball. We're there to drink beer, eat hot dogs, and wear Cubs
That's
gear.
what it seems like. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Los
Exactly.
Angeles, and I like would go to all the Cubs games when they played the LA Dodgers, and that shit felt scary. Like rooting against the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium was like unsafe. Uh, it was never. And so it was like this really weird experience of like always rooting against the home team, and I hated it. But like my dad
Yeah.
made me. Like I wanted to be a Dodger fan, like all my friends, but I couldn't let my dad down. And so, but then eventually when I like moved to Portland, I was like, I'm going to be a Portland Trailblazers fan. And oh my fucking God, I have some parenting advice, which is like, don't make your kids root for visiting teams. You should like, if you're going to make your kid into a sports fan, which is questionable to begin with, but whatever, I'm not going to judge it. Uh, Allow them to root for the home team so they can be like connected to all their friends and in community when they go to the stadium. It's actually like weirdly traumatic if you always have to root against the home team.
That's actually really interesting. I could see that. And then part of the whole point of sports is camaraderie, right? Like
Hmm.
then you pit a young kid against the camaraderie, I guess, against the
Hmm.
alliance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's no good.
So, well, there we go. Therapy Jeff's parenting advice. Maybe we could start a podcast on that.
We could.
Yeah, you need another one. Two's not enough, right?
But right now, I think I'm gonna like hang out at 2 and see what happens.
So I got to ask you, I'm very interested to hear this answer. I ask all my guests, but what did you want to be when you were a young kid? And then how did that evolve as you were growing up and lead you to where you are now?
I mean, I spoiled it just a little bit, but when I first, like, the first thing I ever wanted to do was be an architect. I don't know where
Mm,
that came from,
interesting.
but there was like, growing up in LA, there was lots of big buildings, and I enjoyed looking at the big buildings when I was a little kid. That was like a fun thing for me to do. I would ask my parents to go downtown to show me the buildings, and I was like, I want to make these. That didn't last too long. I eventually wanted to become a baseball player. I started playing, t-ball at 6 years old, and my dad was the coach, and he was the coach for my entire little league. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to be a baseball player. I'm going to be just like Ryan Sandberg, the second baseman for
Mm.
the Chicago Cubs, who was my favorite player growing up. I was born in 1980, so I love Ryan Sandberg, Andre Dawson, Mark Grace, that crew.
And I would have loved
Um,
the irony of you becoming a professional baseball player and then playing for the Dodgers.
I've always wondered, like, I know all these baseball players have teams that they hate, and then they might have to go play for them. How do they resolve that in their head? Or are they just like, fuck it, I am a Major League Baseball player, who gives a shit, right?
I wonder that too. I wonder that too. Because right now with Chicago, like I think about we just traded Justin Fields away to
Right,
Pittsburgh, who was our
right.
quarterback on the Bears, and it's like, man, that guy was Chicago. Like I've got his jersey. He handled the media here, which is tough when you're a Bears quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how is he gonna disconnect himself from us, and how are we gonna disconnect from him and go play someone else? It is a weird thing I would imagine for these players.
It's a weird thing, or we are projecting our own shit onto them, and maybe they're totally fucking fine about it, and they don't care.
It's a paycheck.
You or I need to get like some Major League Baseball players on our shows and ask them these important questions.
That's a
Um,
very, very good point.
yeah.
All right. So
Uh,
you were in your baseball era, and then I
I was in my
interrupted you.
baseball era from 6 years old to 16 years old, and then I mean, in high school, I like decided to be very quote unquote punk rock, which meant like dyeing my hair different colors and painting my nails different colors. Like that was a very punk rock thing to do, I thought. And at the start of a baseball season in high school, where like the first game started, I went out to play second base, and right before the first pitch was thrown, the coach called a timeout and was like, "Hey, before we start this game, Gunther, you need to either take off that fucking nail polish or get the fuck off this field and never come back." And this was like, remember, this was like 1997, where like the coach says this, and everybody on the team and everyone in the stands is like, "Yeah, get that little bitch off this fucking field," or tell. And so I was like, I'm, going through my punk rock era, and I think a punk rock thing to do would be like, fuck you, I'm leaving, and I never played baseball again, which is a real shame because I could have played for the Chicago Cubs, obviously. So I stopped doing that, and then I like barely made it through high school. I got like really poor grades, and I went to Santa Barbara City College, which is, a little community college, the second biggest community college in the country. Really beautiful.
Do you know what the first biggest is? I don't know if it still is anymore, but it's the one I went to.
Is it Santa Monica College in LA?
Oh, it's no, it's Harper College in Palatine, Illinois.
Oh, what the fuck? Well, is that now?
Yeah.
Did that take over Santa Monica College? I don't know. Because Santa Monica College
I don't know.
was number
It's up
one
there.
back in the day. We're
I
gonna
think
have to
it's
dig
yeah,
into this.
it's up
Let's
there.
devote the
I'm gonna
podcast
look.
episode to this. Okay.
I
um,
like it though because community college. There's a little bit of a oh, you went to a community college, but it's actually like quite normal for a lot of people to start there.
It was, yeah, it was no, thank God for community college that it was like there and I was able to go for free. There was this feeling of like, if I don't do this well enough, I'm not sure where I'm going to go from here. So I need to do just good enough to be able to like transfer into like a state college, which I did. Um, but when I was in community college, I decided that I was going to like get into like either computer animation, like 3D animation, or making video games. And so that's what I sort of focused
Mm.
on. I got really sick of staring at the computer and being with that crowd. I didn't like the people who were doing it. Like they were just fucking, I was having a hard time like relating with them or having fun with them. So when I eventually transferred after 2 years to San Diego State University, go Aztecs, I decided to like shift everything and focus on child development. And I thought that it was really interesting to like understand how kids psychologically developed. But that was basically like if you were a child development major, that meant that you were going to be a preschool teacher. And so I taught preschool for a year. And
Oh,
that was
wow.
not, yeah, that was like, the I didn't like it because it was mostly classroom management and wiping poopy butts
I was
instead of
gonna
like,
say,
yeah, instead of like having fun and coming up with lesson plans and like, molding young minds or whatever. It was just like it was a hard job.
I
um
bet.
so then I decided to just like kind of I minored in marriage and family therapy at San Diego State. So I was like, I'm just going to keep on doing that. That's the most interesting thing. And I
Mm.
then went to grad school at USC, go Trojans, and I got my degree in marriage and family therapy.
And did you practice coming out of the gate? Did you know that's what you wanted to do? Because there aren't different things you can do with that specific type of degree?
Yeah, I mean, there's like, so you can start a private practice, or you can work for a community mental health agency, a nonprofit. You can go work for a hospital sometimes. You can work for a group practice, like a big group of therapists that will employ you while you're like getting your, license and getting your hours that you need to collect. I decided to move to Portland 2 weeks after I graduated from USC in LA. And one of the reasons I did that was because like I knew it was easier to start a private practice in Oregon. It's a little more difficult in California. There's lots of hoops you have to jump through and bullshit you have to do. So you can just go to Oregon and like hang a shingle on your office and get a supervisor to supervise you and then start your practice. And that's what I did. But it turned out that like I was not ready to have a private practice. I got way too anxious and way too nervous. And I started to like experience this. My anxiety manifested in a brand new way that I had never experienced before, where while I was talking to clients, I would feel so anxious and it felt like I needed to pee. And I was like, what the fuck? I know I don't need to pee, but it kind of feels like I do need to pee. And then I got like hyper focused on it. And I was like, I
Well, that
think
makes it
right now,
worse.
yeah, I was like, I think right now I'm peeing my pants. And so I'd like look, like casually look down at my pants and be like, there's no pee there. And I would, every time before I would have a session, I would like wouldn't drink all day long. I would try to go pee right before I saw them. I was like dehydrating myself so that like I would like, there's no way pee is going to come out. But it felt like pee was like running down my fucking pants. And so then I was like, okay, I think a way to handle this is to either wear a diaper or like
Oh my
somehow
gosh.
wear a condom so that like it would catch the pee, even though I know there's no pee coming out. But that would like
Oh
make
my.
me. So I decided to stop being a
How
therapist
long did this go
instead.
on for? How did this
Only
go
like
on for?
8 or 9 weeks.
Plus, there's the pressure of like starting your own business that goes into that. Like, what a
There's all
what a
that.
horrible experience.
It
And
was
I'm
so
sorry to
bad.
laugh,
It's a good story.
but like the peeing, and I'm clipping this and and putting this out there.
Yeah, I got really into like trying like understanding phantom pee attacks and if this is like a regular like a way that anxiety manifests. And oh my God, so many people actually experience this.
Really?
it's a thing. But I was just like, I need to avoid this, and I got a job at like a crisis line, just like taking phone calls, which was somehow less anxiety provoking for me. And then eventually I got a job at like being like a middle school counselor where I also did family therapy and parenting
Oh, okay.
classes. And then after that, after a couple of years, just sort of like in the field that way, then I went back into private practice and I didn't have my phantom P attacks. They've never come back. So thank God for that.
Wow. So what was the last one when you first started, or did you still have them a little bit when you were starting up at school and with families again?
No, the last one was in my private practice and it never came back. Now
Wow.
like I mean I have anxiety but it manifests in these different more tolerable ways, I guess, or ways that aren't like that wouldn't be so embarrassing. Like I'll get like a little sweaty on my forehead or something, or I might get a little
That's mine
lightheaded or
too.
whatever. Yeah, like okay, I can handle that, but to like fear that I'm gonna pee my pants, I don't want to fuck with that.
The fact that you went the maybe I need a diaper. Maybe I could put a condom on. I can't even-
But
It's
I was
like
like, a
I
diaper, like, I don't think I can get away with it because it's too
I was
scrunchy
gonna
sounding.
say that.
You're gonna hear it and you're gonna see my
Like every move,
pants.
I'm like,
The clients would be like,
I,
"Oh, what was it? Is he wearing a fucking diaper?" You would like you would lose so much trust in me as your therapist, likely, or you would just be like focused on like, is this man wearing a diaper? And then I was like, can a condom even hold? Like, doesn't it? Like, I'm not sure. And would it be able to? Would it fill up like a balloon? Then would that like balloon fill
then
up in
you'd
my
have
pants
and then pop and
and
make
then
it even
pop?
worse.
Exactly.
Oh my
There's
gosh.
no good solution except for not doing that anymore, is what I thought. Yeah.
Jeez. So so I didn't know phantom peeing was a thing. I get that once in a while. I get that
Mm.
sometimes on flights because I have been able to like compartmentalize flying so I can fly. But I used to like just sitting there, I'm like, I peed 5 seconds ago. Like, why do I have to pee again? So I didn't know it was a thing, but
It's a
me
thing.
on
I also
flights.
there's something I don't know if this is true, but it also kind of feels connected to like being like claustrophobic or something, where it feels like I'm not going to be able to move. There might be
Mm,
an emergency. What if I do pee? Um, and I don't know. It's just like there's not just phantom pee attacks, but there's also phantom poop attacks where it feels like poop might come out your butt. And I was like, I don't want to get to that level. Like I know. I mean, I have
no,
empathy for anyone who's experiencing this. Hopefully, if you
me too.
experience, you're listening and you feel seen and understood, and there's nothing wrong with you. And but like I didn't want to deal with it.
I don't blame you at all. I will probably find myself in this rabbit hole now trying to figure out aside from not flying on a plane, which by the
Right.
way, with everything every day a new Boeing plane falling apart midair, it's kind of like,
No, thank you.
okay, I guess I guess I'll just not fly Boeing. I don't know.
Right. I
But
don't
yeah,
know.
it's that's so funny. So now you said it manifests with a little bit of sweating. I can relate to that too. A lot of it is sweating, but also it's the forehead and the nose. And I actually like had to wipe it down a little bit before hopping on with you here because I was
Sure.
getting the nose and the forehead sweat, getting
Yeah.
getting
Y-
prepped.
yeah. It's just sort of like my body feeling like it's overheating, you know?
Hmm.
And so usually if I know that I might feel nervous or anxious, I go into a situation like holding a cold glass of something, like with ice in it, or like a cold soda can or something, because then that coldness like cools down the rest of my body, or there's like lots of different little tricks that we do, and yeah. So,
It takes me back to my days in a Catholic school from second grade through eighth grade with no air conditioning. And I would be so hot and sweaty in the summer. I would go in the bathroom and there was like no hot water either. So I'd just go in and like put my hands underneath the
yeah.
ice cold water to cool
Oh
off.
yeah. That works perfectly.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
crazy. So what what type of so actually before I ask you that question, I'm dying to know because you said this before we started recording that you hate parents. Walk me through that.
Parents are the worst, am I right? Uh, that was a issue when I like first started practicing as a therapist, you have what is called like, so there's like transference and then there's counter-transference, and transference is sort of like the shit that the clients project onto you. So maybe they're just like, they see you as like professorial, they see you as like the wise person, or they see you as like kind of like boyfriend energy or parent energy or something. They just there's always transference, and there's counter transference, which is like how the therapist sees the client and how they might be reacting to that client. And when I had like these parents coming in for family therapy, I did a lot of like child psychology and therapy and taught parenting classes. I would see my own parents, and I didn't like resolve all my anger and frustration that I have with my parents. And there's sort of like this teenager inside of me that's just like, why weren't you better fucking parents? Why didn't you just step the fuck up, And then I would
Seriously.
have these feelings with the parents that came in, where I'd be like, why aren't you spending time with your kids? Why aren't you fucking playing with them? Like, you are the one that I should be talking to, not your fucking kids who are
Right.
responding normally to you, right? But like, you should, it's best if you're a therapist and you have empathy for your clients. But I was having a
Not
hard
anger.
time, not anger, not like I want to punch you in the fucking face. Uh, so I, again, which is sort of like my thing, is like, oh, there's like a lot to resolve here. So I'm just going to not deal with it. And I don't want to see parents right now. Like,
Mm.
I'm going to go do my own therapy. I'm going to talk to my own supervisor. I think this is going to be somewhat of a journey, so I can like find empathy for my parents. And so then I started focusing on a different type of client in my private practice.
That's so fascinating because I saw this meme a long time ago that is kind of like this, where it's like we're in therapy because our parents refuse to go to therapy, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like this whole thing where it is such a journey. I've been on it myself too, where I tell myself my parents did the best they could with the tools they had, and they made sure that we were fed and that we get educated and that we, the base level, we had places to live even when times were tough. So it
Mm-hmm.
is a journey, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious how long it took you, or if you're still on it, maybe, and
Oh God, I'm
how
so
your
far away from
relationship.
it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I like that line that I've said to my clients a lot, where your parents did the best they could with like the tools or the information they had, and you deserve better. Like, even
Right.
so, even though they did their best. And so I try to kind of like internalize that on my own too. It's hard to do. And I think I like go through stages or phases in my life where I do actually feel a lot more compassion and empathy for my parents, and I see them as like flawed human beings that tried their best. The problem is there's a part of me that's just like, you didn't fucking try your best. And you actually had a lot of tools that you did not fucking use. Uh so like I'm still working on that. And you know what? Like, there's also like, I was just maybe like 6 months ago or something. I've had this current therapist for like a 2 3 years, and she
Okay.
was like, "Man, your mom, you're so angry at your mom." I was like, "Oh my God, I know, she's the worst, right?" And she's like, do you want to work through this?" And I was like, "Badly. I want to work through this because it's like affecting other parts of my life that I don't like, getting in the way of my
Mm.
relationships and shit like that." And so she was like, "Let's try EMDR." And I was like, "EMDR is great. It's so trendy. Everybody loves EMDR. Just a handful of sessions, you're cured. Cure me,
You're done.
therapist." Yeah. And so she was like, "Let's do it." We start doing EMDR, and every time we do EMDR, I'm basically sabotaging it. I'm like not in the mood. I think the stupid thing I have to follow on the screen is distracting. It's not working. Like, and so after 5 sessions, she was like, "You don't want to do this. You're not allowing me to like do therapy on you." And I was like, "I'm not. So let's stop." I would rather like sit in my anger and be angry at my mom than like move through the healing. So apparently I'm not quite ready for it. So that's where I am.
Well, and I'm sure you know this better than me, but you have to be ready for therapy for it to work, or at least
Yes.
get started. I was actually with my therapist last night. I was telling her about my first experience in therapy, which was at a like a government community center kind of thing. They you pay based on what you make and what you can afford and stuff. And I just like wasn't ready for it. I was like 21, 22, and I was just like not ready for it. I wanted a magic pill, right? And so I lasted maybe 3 months, but even when I started up again in probably like 6 years ago now, I wasn't ready. It took me a little while to like warm up to it. So it's sometimes it's easier to stay in the anger. But where are you at now? Are you still in the anger?
Oh my God, it's so fun in the anger. Join me in the anger. I'm in the anger, but like I'm aware of it. I understand how it's affecting me in negative and sometimes positive ways. Um, and that's the thing is like, you know, what if I am in the anger and I'm in the anger for the rest of my life? That's okay. I'm
Peace.
making a choice. Yeah. And I like that I have some mindfulness around it. And I think that it's a little childish and
Mm-hmm.
it would probably be best if I let it go. But the like, I'm trying to think of a good metaphor here. Like, this is maybe a problematic metaphor, but I think you'll get it. So, like, donuts taste great. We love a donut, right? And I wish I could eat donuts for every meal. That's how much I love a donut.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that if I ate a donut, my body would get a lot bigger and I'd feel uncomfortable in my clothes and I wouldn't feel super good about myself.
Right.
So I'm not going to eat a donut every single meal. It's just going to be like a special treat for me every now and then. So it's sort of similar in that, like, what would it take for me to be like, you know what, the effects of dropping my anger and losing it would give me like this longer term benefit, like not eating donuts all the time would give me this longer term benefit of feeling better in my body. I haven't figured out what that longer term benefit would be. I still love being angry slash eating emotional donuts. And that's where I am right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of feels like that's what therapy is about a lot of times, is like I'm trying to convince my clients to stop eating these emotional donuts. And if they're like, actually, these are incredibly tasty and really fun and dramatic and passionate and I enjoy doing that, then you enjoy do that. I'm gonna like point out how it's not really serving you, but I'm not going to force you to stop eating them. And my therapist can't force me to stop eating these angry donuts that lead to like frustration with my mom. You know what I mean? Have I lost
I
you in
totally
this
do.
metaphor? Okay, you get
No.
it. Okay.
Well, first of all, I love donuts, and I used to eat a dozen on my birthday which is disgusting to think
Yeah,
about
that's a lot of
now.
donuts.
But
Yeah.
but they were, to be fair, they were Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts aren't like that big, but anyway, I'm not going to justify that savage
It's
side of
your
myself.
birthday.
But
It's okay.
yeah, but man, I love donuts, and I have those things too, where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to feel this way about this right now, and I'm okay with that. At least I'm aware.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of like
Yeah,
stages of grief. You go back and forth.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm dying to know one last question about your mom. What's your relationship like with her?
Well, she is also a therapist, which I'm sure
I didn't
has
see that
something,
coming.
yeah, uh-huh, which I'm sure has something to do with like me becoming a therapist. I'm pretty sure
Interesting.
that like one of the reasons I became a therapist was to like get more connected with my mom because I always felt like we didn't have much in common. We didn't feel really connected. And me becoming a therapist, I wasn't conscious of it at the time, but I think
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously I was like, how do I connect with this woman? I there was always a feeling of like I miss her.
This woman.
This woman, she really felt like this woman in my life, which was like so weird because like I saw her relating to my older sister so easily. My mom and my sister are the same person, basically. And so I was like, I'm not like my sister and I'm not like my mom. And my mom has plenty of times told me like I had a difficult time connecting with you. I didn't know how to do it. So she struggled. And so I was like creating this bridge by becoming a therapist, um, it backfired on me because
Oh no.
uh, when you become a therapist, oftentimes you become a lot more emotionally intelligent and have a better understanding of your feelings and how your past has affected your personality and your relationships. And then I like had all these new words for the "this is how you hurt me, mom," um, which
She'd have to be
unfortunate.
ready to hear that too.
Yeah. And when I'm not a parent, but I do know that like one of the worst shames you could feel in life is parental shame. Like this is a true thing. And so when I went to my mom and I was like, "Hey, this is why I'm angry. This is how you let me down. This is how I was hurt by you." Her shame hijacked her and continues to hijack her, and she can't have that conversation. Um, so we've been trying to have that conversation since went to grad school over 20 years ago. And eventually during the pandemic, it came to a head and I was like, I can't keep on talking to you about this right now. And in fact, the only way that I'm going to continue talking to you and be in a relationship with you is if you go to family therapy with me. Um, and and she said no. So
What?
it's been 2 years, a little over 2 years, and we haven't talked since.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sorry
Yeah.
to hear that. That's terrible. Did she say why?
I mean,
Or is it just
you
the
should have
shame?
her on a podcast, and I want to listen to it.
Oh,
The problem is like if you are hijacked by shame, oftentimes you're not like, I'm hijacked by shame right now, and it's hard to get in touch. Typically, you're like, "Ugh, stop doing this to me. You're the asshole. What the fuck is wrong with you?"
mm,
So she has a story of like, I'm asking too much from her, I complain too much, or something like that. Um,
I see.
so no, we're very, we don't share the same reality, which is a problem, and that's why I want to go to like family therapy. I don't want to shit all over my mom. She's a good person. I think she's the worst. But if you ask my if you ask my sister what she thinks of her, you'll hear glowing reviews. Um,
So I just have the whole family on. I think
I
this could be
think
fun.
you need to. Yeah, you're missing very important parts, very important like stories here from other people. But she is a therapist that's never gone to therapy, and that is a very unique kind of person that most therapists, the vast majority of therapists, go to therapy.
You're
And so
kind
when
of
you're
supposed to have one, aren't you? Like, isn't that
now
like
it's
part of the,
now it's like mandated. But when
yeah,
she
the code of
was
ethics?
yeah, yeah. But she doesn't do it. So, anyways, we haven't talked in a couple years. If we ever do, I'll come back on the show and I'll tell you all about
No, I can't wait. I
it.
hope that happens for you.
Me
And
too.
what about with your dad? You and your dad, good buddies?
We're good buddies. I'm still mad at him for making me a Chicago Cubs fan, but what the fuck ever. He's good. And my mom and dad got divorced when I was 6 years old, so that was yeah, a long time ago. But we have a good relationship.
Good. So were there step families involved
Yeah, yeah.
since you were so young?
I got a stepmom and a stepdad pretty early on, and then I got a half brother, and he's just a great guy. I love him. I got no issue with him. He's my favorite family member.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. That's cool that you guys
Yeah,
were able to kind of become buddies.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're 11 years apart, so that's quite an age gap, but I don't know. It worked for us.
Okay. Older or younger?
Yeah, he's 11 years younger.
Okay. Well, like, I mean, kind of, I'm sure once you get to a certain age, that doesn't matter as much as it would when you were
Yeah,
younger.
now as adults it doesn't matter, but it was real cute having like a real younger kid brother who was like looking up to me, and he
Hmm.
also painted his nails when I painted my nails in high school. So it was pretty adorable.
The irony of your goth story and the baseball story. So back to Chicago Bears, right? Rumored to draft Caleb Williams, who's going to be number one for those of you who don't follow football. But there was this whole scandal that he was wearing pink nail polish a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
And Chicago, like melted down over it. And it's like this huge thing people are still talking about. It's like,
really?
who cares if he can throw touchdowns? Like,
right. Yeah.
let him be himself.
Exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
fuck. I hate that.
Yeah, me too. I don't get why. I mean, people should just be free to be who they are if they're not hurting other people. And for some reason, people get so triggered by what other people are doing. Like who cares if he's painting his nails? Who cares?
Yeah, who gives a shit? But there's a long, like, toxic masculinity has been intertwined in sports and everything else, but especially sports for so long. And it's such a manly thing to do. And so you're supposed to like look like a man and act like a man and be real strong and tough. And that is like, there should not be any like ounce of like feminism or something on you. And nail polish is very femmy, right? So, yeah, I hope that he can like paint his nails and throw a bunch of touchdowns and we can all evolve with him.
Me too. I would actually love if he did keep painting his nails, if that's what he wants to do, because I just want to see how he plays football. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
On the toxic masculinity thing, though, it's funny you say that, because I wouldn't, masculine, feminine, like I think those are just thrown around and we don't even need those really in our vocabulary. But I am a sensitive person, both about myself and then for others, right? And I always kind of got that, like, man up. Why are you friends? Why are most of your friends girls? Like all of that kind of don't cry, all of that stuff. And it is just so like, I didn't even think about it with this Caleb Williams situation, but it's just so intertwined that it evokes anger from people.
It's really intertwined. When I first started playing baseball as a kid, I was not a very good hitter, so I'd have like I'd strike out a lot. And every time I struck out, I'd want to cry because I was like so upset about it. But I knew that my dad would be so embarrassed. And I got the like, there's no crying in baseball line before that was a fucking line in a movie. Like that was, yeah. So there was, I really wonder what would have happened if like I was allowed to be my sensitive self while on the baseball field, and it was like comforted or understood, or like, like there was compassion and, like, but there was no space for emotions and sensitivity on the field. And that really like stunted my emotional development. And it's kind of a tragedy.
And you know what too, I didn't expect us to go into the sports talk here, but this is fun. It's interesting because if you were to have struck out and probably gone to the sidelines or the dugout, I guess would be, and you would have like kind of thrown your batting helmet down or something, that would have been acceptable. Right. But if you were to cry, that wouldn't have been. And I think about this too. Like I always go back to the NFL because that's the sport I watch the most, but people love Tom Brady's passion when he would go and throw his helmet down and yell at guys. But if he were to go and cry at the end of a lost game or Super Bowl, people would say, all sorts of names that I'm not going to say here to describe him.
Right.
And it's just like, it's all emotion. It's just toxic masculinity and, even feminine in some cases, like you're supposed to do and behave one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the thing is that like under the anger of people like throwing their helmets down or like tossing the Gatorade table or whatever it is, under that anger, which is a secondary emotion, is a more primary emotion of sadness. So like they should, if they were even more like in line with their feelings and could like be congruent with them like behaviorally, then they would be really sad, or they would be really teary, or they would need a hug from their coach, right? Like that would be a lot more genuine. And yeah, that's not there at all.
At all. That was one of the reasons I didn't like to, I shouldn't say I didn't like to play sports, but man, I'd like never cry now, which I know is like a result of not really being able to growing up. And so I think about like sports and stuff. And there's this one time I had is like the most traumatizing sports experience I had. I didn't ever want to play again, but we were not good in basketball at my tiny little Catholic school. We never won. I think we won one game in like my 3 years that I played.
Oh.
And there was one where we were going to beat a team that we never had any business even competing with. And, you know, I'm 6'2" in like 8th grade. So the plan is to get me the ball for a layup underneath the net.
Right.
I get fouled 2 shots, miss them both. Okay. No time on the clock. Miss them both. Someone jumped early. So I get a third one.
Oh, shit.
From the foul. Missed it. And we lost.
Oh,
it was
crushing.
I never wanted to do it again. I cried. It was so embarrassing, shame, disappointment. But that was...
God.
I wasn't allowed to cry.
There's so much, there's so much pressure, and there's so many people watching you, and there's like it feels so meaningful, and you let down your team and your coach and your community and the fans and yourself and your family. So of course you're gonna have like a huge emotional reaction, yet there's like no space for it. That's not okay. When that would be like the most normal human reaction to have in that incredibly specific, unique, crazy experience.
Yeah, exactly. And same for you, striking out. But
thank you.
We're making something out of all of this, I guess.
We
right?
are. Yeah.
So I want to, in a minute here, I want to shift gears and talk about like content creation. But I have one last question I want to ask you that I just thought of. What type of clients are you working with now? Are you working primarily with couples, or do you still work, within a family system?
I never went back to doing family therapy.
Okay.
And I started to focus on just like individuals and couples, and I still see just individuals and couples. I started to kind of like focus on people that felt really anxious in relationships, like an anxious attachment, codependent kind of feeling or energy. And then I also only focused on couples that are new couples that are still in love, like that have fun fights and still have sex. Like the couples that have been together for 35 years and haven't touched each other in 10 years and have like deep resentments forever. I'm just like, bad vibes, babe. Go to another therapist that wants to deal with that. So it's nice, like being in private practice and picking the clients that are still fun and energizing.
Yeah. What's the number one thing you would say you see with your couples that are still in love that they need to work on?
You know, I mean, it's basic, but it's like better listening skills. You know, it's like when your partner is upset, you need to put all of your shit, all your really great, responses and like retorts, all your defenses, all the things that you want to like defend yourself with, like put that all to the side and just focus on like how your partner is feeling, so that they can like know that you understand their emotional experience. And then we'll switch. I promise we will. But it's really hard to put like all your shit to the side and just like be there for your partner. It's a skill that you have to develop. And usually we get there with my clients, but you don't really come wired for that.
Well, and I can tell you too, like active listening, you can apply that to anything. Like learning how to do that. And by the way, not perfect. Don't always apply it. Yeah, I make my own horrible mistakes and try to fix people and fix things and all of that. But like that skill, it's useful in work, it's useful in friendships, it's useful in business arrangements, and it's just such a not taught skill if you don't go to therapy.
Right. Yeah, totally. I agree.
So that's interesting. Well, let's talk about content, because I want to say to people listening to this show, we got connected a few weeks ago on a more personal level. I've been following you for a little while now, but I got frustrated because I saw you post a video about receiving death threats online, not to mention horrible experiences in your comments sections as well. But so I shared it, and I feel like I'm the internet's dad, who's a sensitive dad, maybe, because every time a season of Love is Blind comes out, I have to post a video reminding people that these are human beings and that you shouldn't be mean to them on the internet because you don't know them. And
Right.
now I'm feeling like, well, I monitor other people's comments and go, lecture people there as well. But I shared it with you because one of the reasons I like following you, and I have followed you for a while, is you put out content several times a day. I was joking before we got on that you're usually the first one that pops up when I open Instagram on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
But what I like about your content is it shows your personality. It's authentic. It's important and helpful, but not like talking down to people. And it's also simple, relatable things that are good practical reminders. So when I see someone like you who has a very big social media following, you have a very big presence on the content you put out outside of social media with your podcast and, other stuff as well. And I'm like, who the fuck is giving a therapist trying to help people for free content all across these channels? Why do you want to kill that person? Like, you seem so nice. So what was that experience like for you? And just in general, as a content creator with a big presence on social media, what's that like? And first of all, how did you decide that you wanted to do that? But then what has that experience throughout been like for you?
How did I decide that I wanted to start posting on social media?
Yeah.
It wasn't like a super deliberate decision. It was kind of like I'm bored during the pandemic and I want to fuck around. And like everyone was going through their own sort of personal mental health crisis, and I was seeing therapists on TikTok making content, and I was like, I think I can do that. Like, this seems like a creative challenge that I want to do. And it was my fourth video that like went viral, and I was like, ooh, like I like how I feel. I like the attention I'm getting. I like that this could be a thing. I'm going to keep on doing it and see what happens. And then I kept on doing it. It wasn't too long into like the therapy Jeff experience where I started to get like really nasty comments and some death threats.
Jeez.
And I think it first started with like, a lot of people would follow my account because they wanted to get like relationship advice, or what's a healthy relationship, or should I break up with my partner? I don't know. And they would sort of like get what they needed. And sometimes, predominantly there's like 85% of my followers are women. So it's a predominantly like women following, and some of them would like break up with their boyfriends because of the content that they saw, because they're like, oh, that's what a healthy relationship looks like. That's not what that's not what my relationship looks like. And they would like say like, I saw a Therapy Jeff video and this is what, and then their boyfriends would find me and then they would send me death threats, or just be like, I hope you die from cancer, or if I ever saw you on the street, like these sort of like, and I was like, oh, this is fucking weird and this is gross. And it was disturbing. And I was like, I guess I just have to like filter this out, not read these as much as I can. But there's only so much that you can stay away from. Like, they will find you if they want to scare you, right?
100%.
Yeah. And then, if you like start making content and you go viral here and there, your content is going to end up on the wrong side of the internet. It's going to, it's a lot safer emotionally if you make content and it just goes out to your community of followers that follow you, that have decided to take interest, and but when it starts to like go viral and then end up in these really wild, horrible, like disgusting places on the internet, like it usually goes viral because it's gone to Reddit? The wrong side. Yes.
Yeah. You can just say it.
Like Reddit. And also on Twitter, like the Libs of TikTok. Too. Yeah, Libs of TikTok account is like where they would like take people that they thought was really progressive or liberal and then just like blast them and be like, look, this fucking asshole. There was like some content I made where I was just like, mass shootings are not a mental health problem. They're like a gun problem, and then I was like, that sort of took off. And then there was like the Jonah Hill video I made where it's like, Jonah Hill is using therapy speak in the wrong way. He doesn't know how to use the word boundary. Yeah, he's weaponizing it. Exactly. This is the right way to use the word boundary, and that went really viral. And then it like got into like the incel community on Reddit, you know, and then I got like messages being like, you're the man that like is, you're like, you're the problem with men. You're like making everything worse. And like, I hope you fucking die. And if I ever see you, so lots of
What
death
the
threats.
fuck?
It's just I don't it's weird to have you shouldn't have a job where you're getting death threats no matter what your job is, and then you have to kind of like filter it out emotionally and mentally, and that's a really difficult thing to do. And that's one of the reasons I have a plan to stop posting as much as I am posting, because it's just the mental and emotional load is too much.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I shared with you before we started filming that I post if I have something to say. Otherwise, I'll go days without going on. And I'm like, whatever. It's much more
Mm-hmm.
freeing. But you know, I had Dr. Kirk Honda. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Psychology in Seattle.
Yes, I
He's
know
got a
him.
pretty successful YouTube show.
Right.
I had him on my show last summer, and he had done some videos on Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, and he was telling me how he found like Reddit, there was like blueprints to get him to lose his license. Like
Wow.
people were organizing to make him lose his job as a teacher or a professor and lose his license.
Mm-hmm.
What? It like what's going on in these people's heads?
I don't know. But I have also been there's been like complaints made to the Oregon Board of Licensed Professional Counselors for me too to like get my license taken
Jeez.
away. And the Oregon Board of Licensed Professional Counselors like kind of can't stand me because they're like, this is fucking these complaints are fucking stupid and you're not going to get your license taken away, but we have to investigate every single time
Yeah.
it happens. So it doesn't like I mean, it impacts me in that like I'm scared, like, oh no, what if this is going to do something? It never does. Like my license isn't taken away, but it's just like now I have a weird bad relationship with the board because they just like can't stand therapy, Jeff, and the work that they have to do for me. Yeah, I mean, I've seen like other therapists sort of like get canceled for not good reasons and then just sort of like have like an emotional breakdown because of it because they can't
Mhm.
handle it. It's hard.
Yeah, The View put my friend Therapy Gal on blast. And anytime the women of The View are opening their mouth, it's usually not something good coming out. But
Right.
yeah, they did this whole segment, and they put a video of her on TikTok where she makes very funny content, a lot about ADHD because she has it. And so she
Mm-hmm.
made a funny video, and they showed it as part of this whole segment talking about how therapists are using TikTok and they're using Instagram and they're sharing client information that clients didn't sign. I'm like,
No.
this, first of all, like I know her and she is not doing that. She's making fun of herself. And
Mm-hmm.
second of all, like to just put people on blast without knowing what the fuck you're talking about. And then also, like, these people have careers, they're licensed. It's not like you get fired from a job for, you know, screwing up, you go get another job. Like, you lose your
Right.
license, you lose your career.
Exactly.
And it's awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's also like I don't know, the American Psychological Association, our individual state boards, they don't know what to do about it. There's
Mm-hmm.
like I don't think they're like fans of like mental health, licensed mental health workers like being on social media. And they also don't know how to regulate it. They don't know if they should like create specific ethics to go
Mm-hmm.
along with it. They probably should. I would love to like help them do that. But it does feel like this weird kind of Wild West situation where like therapists just sort of like need to like be ethical and use all of their ethical trainings to make sure that they're like creating good content that doesn't cross any weird boundaries. But there's also this like funny thing that's happening where some people, some like, you know, kids in high school or in college are watching like online influencer therapists or content creator therapists, and they're like, I want to do that. I don't even want to be a therapist that sees people in private practice. I want to be a licensed therapist on TikTok. So they're going to grad school, and now they're like, there's a handful of them that come right out of grad school and start creating content that haven't gone through, they're not like old enough, or they don't have the experience, or they're not wise enough, or they're like, they go right into making content, and it's just like, ooh, no, like you're like stumbling and fumbling all over the place, and you're doing shit that's actually not okay. So it's I don't know, it's a funny thing that's happening.
Literally last night, my therapist was like, I don't know how these people, these like therapists, young therapists, I don't know how they can all go on social media. They don't have any clinical experience and then have anything that is actually relevant to say.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they don't have much to say, but they are actually, some of them are actually really good content creators. So like they know how to like get a following, but the substance of what they're saying isn't good, which creates like not good content actually, even though it's like content that can like really pull
Polished.
you in and polished. Yeah, it's such a weird experience.
I wonder. So this is like something my therapist and I talk pop culture sometimes, just because I go crazy thinking
Sure.
about these things. Like
Yeah.
they live rent free in my brain. A lot of culture lives rent free in my brain, and that's one of the things that we chatted about. Where it's like, what is the good content? Like who's qualified to do it, and how do you actually like determine that? Because some flashy editing, and I use this example, and I'm gonna piss off people with this probably, but I don't like Marvel or DC or comic book movies because I felt like when they first started making them and creating this whole universe, all these movies just became like overstimulation, so that the next one would have to overstimulate you more, and it's all flashy editing and CGI and all of these kind of chaotic things that just send you into sensory overload, or at least that's how I felt. And I'm like, that's not how I want it. But I feel like with content, it's the same way. Like people are doing these extravagant dance videos or extravagant transition videos, and the content isn't practical, nor is it really useful, but it's eye-catching and it's short and it's quick. And sometimes it makes you laugh, which is good, but it is a very weird time, and there's no policing of it, or by the the American Counselors Association or the APA
Right.
or any of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, like it's the content is just sort of like you're saying, they're just giving you dopamine hits, right?
Oh yeah.
And it like, maybe the mental health content, like hopefully the mental health content is more thoughtful and thought provoking, and kind of like can plant little seeds to maybe like help you think about things differently or change in the long run or something. I mean, obviously TikTok, Instagram isn't therapy, but it can be sort of
Right.
therapeutic. It can feel validating. It can kind of like put you on a path to like explore more about a
Yes.
certain thing, right? Or go to your own therapy, or destigmatizing therapy, that sort of thing. There's like so many benefits that you can get while watching like mental health content. But it's so weird that it's like all these different types of content are mixed into your screen and your For You page or whatever it is.
Yep.
And you're just like absorbing it like little dopamine hits. And, like I would want people, it feels like maybe this content should go on like a longer form, like YouTube or podcasts like this. But
Yeah.
that's not, people are just sort of like getting content real quick these days.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're right to the point where it can be helpful. It can be, I like practical reminders, right?
Hmm.
That's why I follow a whole bunch of therapists. It's like, oh, that's a good practical reminder. Oh, that's validating. And oh, you know what? That's something maybe I need to explore. And I also think it makes it accessible to people who maybe can't afford therapy, or
Right.
who live in a household where a younger person where they can't go get it because
Hmm.
it's too stigmatized, or they wouldn't be perceived well by parents or guardians or whatever. So there is a benefit to it, but like, how do we regulate that? Like, how, if you worked with these agencies, like what are top level one or two things you would do to help give
Mm.
kind of some ethical guidance? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I like the question. It's funny because I also think about like on TikTok and Instagram, there's like certain words that you can't say, like, or else you'll get banned or shadow banned, or you just won't get views or something. Like you can't say the
I'm
word
shadow banned,
penis,
so
or yeah, or you can't like say the word
yeah.
sex, or you can't say the word orgasm, or you can't say the word um, toxic masculinity. Like there's like lots of words that we want to be able to use that like are important for therapy for like content there, but it doesn't. So I'd want like some sort of special thing where like in TikTok and Instagram, all the social media platforms, they would like verify you in a special way of like this is like a mental health therapist that's licensed, and they can say the words like suicide that you're not allowed to say.
Right.
Um and so it would give us like a little more leeway, and there'd be
Mm,
like this sort of like trusted badge or whatever for like mental health creators that have been approved or vetted by the APA and fucking TikTok or whatever. Like you join forces that
mhm.
way. Um, and if there's like, complaints about that sort of content, then it can be like, you know, it could go to the APA or it could go to TikTok or it can go to some third party, I don't know, and that it can be like thought about in a like thoughtful way, or that it's like it's
Right.
not just like, oh, these are the incels that hate you and they're flagging all of your shit, and now so that might be helpful. Also, like,
I like
mm,
that.
trying to figure out like, I don't know what the answer is, but there's probably some really good like ethical code that we should all be following online as therapists and counselors or just mental health creators about like the type of content that we put out there, the type of disclaimers that we have, letting people know
Hmm.
like what you should expect and not expect from the content that we have. I don't know. It's a good question that I'd love
I
to like
like that.
explore.
I like that. One of the reasons I ask is you mentioned it, but another reason is I know with the UCAN Foundation, we're exploring ways to get ethical codes updated or implemented relating to how mental health professionals and psychologists can interact with reality
Mm.
TV
Mm-hmm.
production companies due to how they're conducting psych exams and then how they could or could not be used for certain things and to create drama and to better understand people for manipulation tactics or whatever that is. So I think it's interesting, and I know it moves very, very slow. So hopefully there is something to be
Mm-hmm.
done there. But even when I make mental health content, which I don't do as much anymore, but I always say either I learned this from this person who is smart and is licensed or whatever. I learned
Mm-hmm.
it in my own therapeutic journey,
Mm-hmm.
or it's something that worked for me. And
Mm-hmm.
just because it works for me, that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So
Mm-hmm.
there are ways I think people can sort of self-regulate and then
Mm-hmm.
put those guardrails around in general how content creators in the mental health space are, I guess, regulated. I don't know if that's the right word, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's like lots of people, especially during the pandemic, were like diagnosing themselves based on
ugh,
like, and it's just like that's not how you get a diagnosis. Actually,
everyone
this is
turned
the
into a
wrong way.
narcissist.
Yeah,
Everyone turned it. Everyone
right.
who's ever been an ex has become a
Yes, yes,
narcissist in
yes.
someone's
Uh-huh.
story.
Yep.
And as someone who was diagnosed that, among other things, on the internet by complete strangers who have no
Right.
degrees whatsoever,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, I can understand that.
It's the worst.
So, another one more question I wanted to ask you, and then I'll give you a chance to ask me anything. And you and I chatted a few weeks ago, and you were talking a little bit about like the content creation community and potential unionization as something that you find interesting. So I'm curious to know when did you first start thinking about that type of community or unionization, whatever it is, and what would that look like in your view?
Yeah, I think I started looking at it because when I eventually like, I was making content and then a year into it, I was like, I'm gonna try to monetize this. And then I was like, how much do I charge? How much do I make? And there's no information out there really about like how much one, and then And then I was like, I really want to. And then I was like asking content creators, how much do you charge? And they were cagey and they weren't telling me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it took a long time. And it wasn't until I started to like tell other content creators, like, this is how much I make. What do you make? And so it started with just sort of like, let's all get on the same page and charge similar amounts or charge even more, whatever. Um, and that started to like become like I started creating a community that way. And then it was about like when you eventually sort of when people try to like, you know, troll you or like fuck with you or try to cancel you in different ways or whatever when you shouldn't be canceled. So then it became the sort of like emotional support group. And then it was like the demands of making content is overwhelming. And also like,
it's way harder than people think,
oh,
even to
it's
throw your
so
phone
hard.
up and talk.
Yes, it is. And my like boss is fucking TikTok or Instagram. It's the algorithm. The algorithm is my boss. And like I don't know what the algorithm wants every single day, but I'm trying to figure it out. So I'm trying to figure out like how to please the algorithm that they are deliberately keeping from me so that I
And changing
don't know
constantly.
constantly, right? And that is so weird to have that type of boss, this like algorithm, and then to get like automatic like instant feedback every time you post something and you're anxious about what the feedback is. I get like these performance reviews basically every single day.
Oh my
And
God,
that's
that's
really
such a
overwhelming.
funny way to think about it.
I
That's so
hate it.
true.
Yeah. And there's like I want to feel proud of the content that I make that I feel really good about. Like I feel like sometimes I make a piece of content, it's so creative or so funny or so interesting, and I'm like, oh, I love this. But if it doesn't get the views and the engagement that I think it should get, it feels like it's a failure. I feel like I failed,
Totally.
even though creatively I have succeeded and I've grown, but it doesn't fucking matter because I didn't get as many views as I should. So like talking to other content
These are
creators
all
that are
the
going through the
reasons I
same
stopped
thing.
obsessing over
Yeah.
posting, because I'm like,
Yeah.
how did this, every time I say anything about Love is Blind, it's usually like hundreds of thousands of views.
Right.
And then I talk about something that's like really much more important than the
Mm-hmm.
drama, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like 10,000. It's
Right.
wild.
Yeah.
It's like, why
And
waste? Yeah. Why waste
it
your time?
affects your day. It fucks with your mood. And then you're just like, oh, this is affecting me. I hate this, you know?
Yeah.
So and we also don't have any like power. Like we can't like call somebody at TikTok or Instagram or YouTube and be like, hey,
No, it's a
what's going on?
void.
Yeah, it's a total void. We can email people. We don't know if those are good emails. They probably won't get back to us. It's like took me forever to get like verified. It's so weird. So like
Yeah.
if we had some sort of power to like just be
Process.
yeah, or process, yeah, someone we could talk to, a community that we can lean on, transparency about how much we get paid, how much we should get paid. Um, yeah, I think it'd feel a lot better doing what I'm doing.
I admire that. And I hadn't thought about that before you mentioning it to me. So I think you're spot on with that. And I actually think that would probably happen before or really quickly if you've got the right amount of people involved in that.
Probably.
I think it could be, yeah. Is that something you think you're like taking on, or is it something that you're kind of like,
I
I'll do my
would,
part, but if
I
it,
would, I would like fuck around and find out. I would take it on
uh,
and then see how it felt and if it was like good and empowering and exciting and challenging, but like, you know, ultimately like having me grow and create community that was good, then like I would do it. But if it turned into like such a battle that like wore me down, then I'd hand it off to someone else and I would just like be a supporter probably.
well, if it's anything like reality TV, it's a
Yeah.
exhausting trying to corral such giant personalities to like move in the same direction is a lot harder than one might think. So
Yeah.
I admire, I'm not saying it's impossible. I think it's very possible. And I think it's awesome that you have such a passion for it. But it is
Maybe
funny
I'll do
too,
it.
because I think you should. I think you've got the obviously the personality for it, but just you've got a good following. You get it. You probably could start with like some smaller influencers and really kind of like build the army on the ground, you know. And I don't know, I think it's something cool.
It's a
You
good
should
idea.
try.
Yeah,
Give you extra
we'll
work
see.
to do.
Uh-huh.
Love doing that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you have my support there. And I can't believe I almost forgot to ask you about your book coming out. I think it's June, right?
And it's July.
July. Okay.
July 9th.
Tell us about your book.
Yeah, there's been lots of like wonderful things that I've gotten from like becoming a big content creator, and that's one of them where it allowed me to get like a literary agent and encouraged me to write a book. And it's called Big Dating Energy, and it's about, finding like being your authentic self and finding a healthy relationship that's a good match for you. So it's like a really like easy to read, funny, useful book that kind of like guides you through all of the stages of relationships, all the way from like first blaming your parents, which, as you know, on this podcast, I love to do. So I blame parents and I blame society and I blame Hollywood for all your relationship woes that you have. And then we kind of go into like, how can you take responsibility for how you were impacted, and then find somebody who's a good match for you. And then eventually also like one of my favorite parts of the book is like how to break up with somebody, like how to be a good breaker upper is like, that's one of the first questions I like want to ask somebody when I'm like dating them is like, are you a good breaker upper? I wish I could interview your exes just because I feel like it really reveals
Seriously.
the kind of person you are. Because it's hard.
That's
hard
a
to break
really
up with
good
someone.
point.
Yeah.
It is.
I haven't been a good breaker upper, and I had to work hard at becoming one, and I'm still learning,
What
but
is a good breaker upper?
it's somebody who's just like straightforward, compassionate, honest, is not leading you on, understands like the impact that they're having on you when they do break up with you, is very clear, doesn't go back and forth, isn't like avoiding it because they feel too guilty or they don't want to hurt you or whatever. Like, and somebody also who's like, before you break up with them, you're letting them know, like, hey, I'm having feelings, I'm having doubts. Let's talk about this so that you're not like totally fucking thrown off guard when it's like, oh, by the way, I'm ending this relationship. It's a whole process. Anyways, I wrote the book. I love the book. And I think that you will too. You can order it at therapyjeff.com or Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever.
And that link is down in the show notes as well. I'm going to be picking it up because I'm interested. One, I feel like I am my authentic self. And then two, I feel like that's the best way to find someone who actually likes you for you, right?
Right.
But I'm not having any success, but I'm also not trying at all.
Oh, okay.
So
well, that's
it's
probably the problem.
That's probably, it's like everybody in my life is like, you got to start dating. Like, am I supposed to go on Hinge? Like, I still get people that message me and they're like, hey, I saw you on Hinge in San Antonio. Are you there? And I'm like, no. So people like impersonating, it's like, I don't even know where to start. But anyway, I'm looking forward to picking it up when it comes out. Yeah. And I encourage everyone to go down in the show notes, click that link and do yourself a pre-order. But before we go, and I want to thank you again for your time, I'll give you the chance to ask me anything, even though you interviewed me. I'll throw that down in the show notes too. I'll throw the link to our podcast.
It's such a good
episode.
It's a good idea.
Thanks. Oh my God. Yeah. The comments. I think I messaged you. I was like, holy shit, your audience is, they're like fighting each other. They're fighting me.
I know.
It was wild.
Yeah.
I commented. A healed version of Nick doesn't respond to the comments, but the unhealed version that pops out every now and then is so sarcastic he can't help himself.
Me too. I get it.
Yeah. But anything you want to ask me?
Yeah. So okay. Let's say you get like, some real bad news from your doctor. Your doctor's like, you're gonna die in 48 hours. You're just gonna drop dead. Won't be painful, but you're done. You're dead in 48 hours. And so for the next 48 hours, you can do whatever you want. What would you do for those 48 hours, how would you prioritize them?
Wow. Well, oh my goodness,
Think
I
about
never
it, take it
anticipated
in.
that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe all those hours are going to be really precious to you. Maybe you want to like go out with a big bang. Maybe you just want to spend it with people. I don't know. What is it? Where are you going?
The first thing that entered into my head, which is not what I would want to do, but I would want to go. I immediately was like, I'd want to go to space, or I'd want to go as far into the ocean as I possibly could. But then I'm like, no, because I'm terrified of space and I'm terrified of the ocean, and I would be in anxiety the entire time.
Wait,
So
well,
like,
then why? Why is that the
I don't
first
know.
thing?
I don't know. I was thinking
Interesting, though.
extravagant, and then things that I wouldn't normally have an opportunity to do, and things I wouldn't want to do. But I think if I was with someone in a relationship, God willing, healthy relationship and everything, I think I would just want to spend it with them.
Just you and that one other person, nobody else.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Or at least one of the days, and then maybe one of the days with my closest friends, who are really my family when it comes down to it, because I'm not very close with mine. So it's that. But in reality, if I didn't have someone or friends weren't available, I'd probably spend it by myself, which is like, because I'm like so picky about where I spend my time that I'm an introvert. So I'm kind of like, man, I bet people would have a lot of questions. And
are you gonna? but would you do? Would you do any drugs? Just like get really high on something, or would you go travel somewhere?
So I would definitely travel with said partner.
Okay.
I would definitely be getting totally trashed at the very least.
Sure.
But yeah, maybe. You know what? I know what I would do. I would go do ayahuasca. That's what I would do.
That's a good transition into death, right? So yeah, you would. I mean, there'd be a lot that you'd go through, most likely, and yeah, that's really kind of like getting everything you can get out of life in a real short amount of time.
Right, exactly. And that's where I'm kind of like thinking out loud with this stuff, because there's so many things that. But then I'm thinking, would I want to spend it high? But would I want to?
Maybe not.
I don't know. You
have to think about this a little bit more.
I will. And I can tell you, I won't be choosing space or the ocean. I can confirm that after working through this with you right now.
But I like that you went there first, though, because it's kind of like, what can I experience that I haven't experienced yet that is so like that I couldn't experience when I'm dead? I don't know what you think happens when we die. But you probably won't get
That's
to
why I need
experience
the
the
ayahuasca trip.
Exactly. Right. Okay.
No, that's a very good point. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on today. This was great. And tell people where they can find you. And again, I'll put all of those links down in the show notes too.
Sure, yeah. You can find me at Therapy Jeff on TikTok and Instagram. You can go to therapyjeff.com. You can listen to my podcasts, Big Dating Energy and Problem Solved. You can even email me, non-death threats, at jeff@therapyjeff.com.
You're bold giving your email out there.
It's out there.
You give them another channel. I know I saw it on your website. I was like, ooh, bold.
Yep.
So cool. Well, thanks again. We'll definitely have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.